Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Classic Comics. So, I was going to review this new book for DC, Far Sector. This features the newest Green Lantern. Joe Mullen is her name, I believe. But it's honestly, it's hardly worth reviewing. Now, if you don't know, so this is the newest Green Lantern, and apparently how she got to be a Green Lantern is with her laptop. She actually hacked into this central power battery on Oa or something like that and managed to copy the Guardian's technology. Now bear in mind, Oa is at the center of the universe, far away from Earth, and their technology is so advanced it's like indistinguishable from magic, as Arthur C. Clarke would have said. So yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. And long story short, she's assigned to a sector at the far end of the universe, so Far Sector. There's a murder on a world that hasn't had a murder in like 500 years, and she investigates. And overall, it's kind of dull. There's just a lot of people talking, a lot of people standing around. The art's okay. It's decompressed. It's your typical modern comic book storytelling. Decompressed for the trade paperback. You know, the story could probably be told in 3 issues or 2. I mean, the coloring is good. I'll say that much. The coloring is pretty good. But that's really all I have to say about this. So instead, I'm going to review this. So this is Batman number 232. And this is actually a reproduction. So this issue was originally published in April of 71, I believe. And as you'll see, this is a modern sort of reprint of it. You see $3.99. Marvel and DC are both doing this now. They're doing pretty regularly. They're doing reprints of old stuff, which makes sense because I think people like the old stuff better, and it's probably a lot cheaper to make. They just have to, reproduce it. They don't have to pay the artist or anything. And this issue also has a mystery in it, but one that's much more compelling, I think. Now, I actually had this story when I was a kid in the 70s. Now, I didn't have this original issue, but this storyline was reproduced in a Treasury edition. Now, the Treasury editions, they were these oversized comics. This is back before they had graphic novels and trade paperbacks. They would take popular storylines or storylines that they considered very important, stories that were important, and put them in these oversized comic books, like this. Like this here. So this is the original Star Wars comic. I actually got this for Christmas in 77 after Star Wars in theaters. It was the following December. And as you can see, I mean, it's much bigger than a regular comic, right? And these Treasury editions, they were pretty unique to the 70s, generally. You didn't really see them earlier in the Silver Age, and you really didn't see much of them afterwards. Now, I think in the late 90s, DC did a handful of them. They did a few of these, but that's about it. Now, it's worth talking about what was going on at DC. Let me cut that glare. Okay. Now, it's worth talking about what was going on at DC in the early 70s. So the Silver Age had ended, and Marvel was really starting to rival and even exceed DC in the comic book market. Batman in the Silver Age had been very, kind of whimsical, and might say even say goofy. The stories generally were very light and sort of kind of corny, and Batman, his adventures, they would always be in the daytime. Everything was very bright and colorful. Batman and Robin would be smiling all the time. That trend kind of hit its peak in the late 60s with the Batman TV show that starred Adam West, which was very bright and colorful, and also kind of satirical and campy. The show ended in 69, and DC's sales were really starting to sag. Now, Marvel had taken the industry by storm in the mid-60s by taking a more serious approach towards superheroes in contrast to DC, at least. I mean, they were, by today's standards, those stories were also kind of corny, you know, and often kind of goofy. But compared to what DC was at the time, they were much more viewed as being much more serious. So in the early 70s, DC started to revamp their lineup to take a more kind of thoughtful approach to them. Part of this was rebooting Batman. Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams, Denny O'Neil was the writer and Neil Adams was the artist, of course, took a more serious approach to the character. They took him back to a more of what he originally was, kind of a dark figure who preyed on Gotham's criminals at night. They also removed Robin from the book and got Batman back to where he was, you know, a lone crime fighter again. They aged Robin up from, you know, a boy wonder to a teen wonder to his late teens, and then they sent him off to college. So they got him out of the picture. And so for the first time since 1940, Batman was actually on his own again. Now, he moved out of Wayne Manor and he moved into downtown Gotham. He had a penthouse that he lived in at the top of the Wayne Foundation building, and he had kind of a makeshift Batcave in his sub-basement. You know, and he rationalized that, saying, you know, it's better if I'm here because now I'm closer to where the crime is, as opposed to when he was in Wayne Manor off in the countryside. And of course, they also revamped some of his villains. Instead of being a wacky bank robber, the Joker became a deranged, murderous lunatic, for example. They also introduced some new villains in this era. And this issue featured the first appearance of one of Batman's biggest villains. The most important villain introduced during this era, really, which is Ras Al Ghul. Now, we start out here with Robin. And again, he was off at college at this point, so he's kind of sneaking into his college apartment, I guess. And he gets ambushed. And then we've got Bruce, and he hasn't heard from Dick in a while, so he's kind of growing concerned. And you know this is like the 1970s, because Bruce has on his Hugh Hefner smoking jacket. But anyway, he gets this message, you know, with a photo of Robin as a captive. You know, Batman, we have Robin, save him if you can. And again, story by Denny O'Neil, art by Neil Adams and Dick Giordano. So Batman decides he's going to go back to Wayne Manor to analyze the photo and try to get some answers. Oh, and another thing worth mentioning is that, of course, the person who sent this message to him obviously knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman, because otherwise why would he send him a picture of Robin? So keep that in mind. So Batman goes back to Wayne Manor to analyze the message, and he finds Ras Al Ghul there in the cave waiting for him. And Ross explains that his daughter Talia, and Talia had actually been introduced, I think, the month before in an issue of Detective Comics, and where Batman had saved her from some kind of group of killers or something. And he tells him that basically he's gotten a similar message. His daughter has been kidnapped and is being held captive, and someone challenging him to come and find her. And he knew that, you know, to solve this mystery, he'd need the world's greatest detective, who is Batman. So he had his people investigate, you know, and they finally came to the conclusion that the most likely person to be Batman in Gotham is Bruce Wayne. So he knows Bruce Wayne's identity. So Batman begins examining the note, and he finds traces. You know, he's doing actual detective work. This is back when Batman actually was a detective and did actual detective work. He would find clues and do research, and actually do kind of the mental part of crime fighting. He really doesn't do that anymore. Nowadays, he just finds some punk and beats it out of him, whatever he wants to know. But he finds some traces of a rare herb on the note, and these herbs are known to be used by a cult called the Brotherhood of the Demon, which is based in Calcutta. And Ross says, okay, that's good. I have a plane waiting, so we can go ahead and go there right now. And they even reprint the original ads. This is an advertisement for some models based on the Universal Monsters. It's got Vampirella in it, actually. And here we see this. So they're jetting away in Ross's Learjet here. And then we get a quick retelling of Batman's origin and then how he met Dick Grayson. Then we go to Calcutta, and Batman strong arms a couple of local punks and wants to know where the Brotherhood of the Demon is, and he gets them to tell. And, and another thing. Another thing I noticed while reading this. Look at that leg. Batman has not been... He has been skipping leg day. He has not been doing all the work. So they go down this particular alley where they're told the Brotherhood of the Demon is located. Batman enters this room and he gets attacked by a leopard that's waiting in there. And then Batman actually kills the leopard with his bare hands because... he's Batman, right? And then they find a map inside a desk in the room. And the map has a route traced on it that leads up into the mountains. And Batman says, I can fund an expedition up there if you want. And then Ross says, no, I can do it. We can leave immediately. And so they head up into the Himalayas. And then they have the original letters page, which was really interesting to read. And the first letter that's actually here, as you can see, is by Mike W. Barr. Mike W. Barr would actually go on to be a comic book writer himself. He did a lot of work on Batman. Did a lot of work at DC in general. He worked mostly at DC, but he also worked at Marvel. He worked at Dark Horse. He actually did with the Ultraverse, if you remember the Ultraverse line. He worked on that. He did Mantra. If you remember that character from the Ultraverse, Mantra, he created that character. But the main thing he's probably known for, or would be known for, is Mike Barr, along with Jim Aparo, the artist, co-created The Outsiders. If you've ever heard of The Outsiders, Batman and the Outsiders, that was him. He created that book and created that team. But really, for me, the main thing I think of is actually one of my absolute favorite comic books, which is a comic that DC published, a limited series they published in the early 80s called Camelot 3000. One of my absolute favorite books, and for my money, it's one of the best things DC ever published. I'd put it up there along with, heck, Watchmen or just about anything. I'll do a video on that one day, definitely. Now there's, 1, 2, 3... So I think there's like 5 letters here. And what's interesting is 2 of these letters are actually from female readers. This one, Michelle Mondro, Madeline Robbins. And it's funny because if you read the letters, what are they about? Well, basically they're about 2 main things. 1, Batman needs a girlfriend. Batman needs a girlfriend. And the other is about how Robin's uniform, needs to be changed. They don't like his uniform. So basically, what are their letters about? Relationships and clothes. Now, I don't want to stereotype, but, there you go. Oh. Again, you got to quit skipping leg day, Batman. Okay, so now they move up into the mountains. So they're in the Himalayas. And one of the things about Ras Al Ghul really is that he's almost kind of like a Bond villain. And this story really has kind of a James Bond feel to it. I mean, if you think about it there, you know, I mean, they're not just hanging around the alleys in Gotham. I mean, they're jetting off on Learjets to exotic locations, fighting, you know, foreign international enemies. And it seemed like this was part of trying to really make Batman's world bigger and kind of raising the stakes. You know, Ross isn't a guy who's just a threat to, you know, commit some bank robberies or even to go on a, you know, be a serial killer and murder some people. I mean, he's like a major international criminal. He's a criminal of a different order than most of what he's faced before. So, yeah, the Himalayas, and they're climbing up, and then they get shot at by a sniper, and Ross gets hit, or so it seems. And then Batman kind of swings off the mountain, takes out the sniper pretty quick. And then he sees smoke, which he guesses is coming from where the Brotherhood is located. And then he approaches the entrance to their cave. And, of course, they threaten him and tell him they'll kill him. But, of course, Batman's not buying it. And he just pushes right past them because Batman's figured out the game. He knows what's up here. Now, it's worth mentioning that Neil Adams, who, of course, drew this issue, you know, he brought kind of a new style to comics. You know, kind of a more gritty, realistic style. Definitely a big departure from the Silver Age. And he was one of the first real kind of celebrity artists, you know. I don't know who you would say the first one was. Maybe it was Steranko, Jim Steranko, over at Marvel. Could have been him. Of course, one could say Kirby, maybe, and maybe he was the original one, but I don't think he was really seen as a celebrity until he did his work at Marvel. But, you know, I mean, I guess you could say him. But Adams' style, you know, it was more realistic, a little more, you might say, grounded, not dull or unheroic. I mean, because if you look at Batman, for the most part, I mean, he is well muscled. I mean, look at him there. I mean, he looks totally badass there. You know, and I like this shot of him. You know, so he's not hitting leg day every day, but overall he's still heroically proportioned. Like a superhero probably really should be. So he finds Robin. And of course they all tell him, like, stop where you are, blah, blah, blah. But he just tells them, you know, don't waste my time. You're not going to shoot me. You know it. I know it. So stop, you know, stop playing, stop, you know, drop the act. And then he slips Robin a knife to cut himself free. And then the leader of the Brotherhood of the Demon enters. And they demand that Batman kneel. And, of course, Batman's like, no, I don't think so. And then he lays it all out. He knows what's going on. He knows that this is a game. He knows that this is a setup. They've been basically playing him and testing him all along. You know, the kidnappings, you know, and then their trip to Calcutta and everything. It was all pre-planned. And they've been guiding him through these steps all along. And then he says, you know, I'm fed up. I'm through playing the game. And I love this. He's just like, you know, I'm tired of talking. Are you ready, Robin? And Robin says, check, Batman. Shall we begin? And then they proceed to just wreck this whole crew. It's a nice little action sequence here. And then, of course, he exposes the leader of the Brotherhood of the Demon as Ubu, Ross's bodyguard. And then he proceeds to just frickin' wreck Ubu and lay him out. And, of course, then He discovers Ross and Talia, and of course Talia was never kidnapped. This whole thing was just a scheme concocted by Ross to test Batman. And Batman says, you know, I knew what was going on. I figured it all out. The only reason I can't figure out is why. What was the point of all this? And Ross says, well, I think it would be obvious. My daughter Talia loves you and wants to marry you. And I wanted to test you to see if you were worthy of being her husband and being my son-in-law. And of course, Batman's like, whoa! So, Batman comics don't get much better than this, really. I mean, this is a true classic. And again, squats. You got to do those squats, Bats. Got to do them. So, what do you think of this issue? If you haven't read it, I urge you to seek this issue out at your local comic shop and give it a look. It's only well, yeah, it's full price. It's $3.99. But it's worth it. Now, also, what did you think of this review? Did you enjoy this video? If you did, please like this video. Please subscribe to my channel. Hit the bell for more notifications, for more videos, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching.